He thought he was shaping an obedient son. He was actually creating something else entirely.
Razor straps and rosaries. Some entries come easy, words spilling out like water from a pump. This one's harder, not because the memories ain't clear. They're crystal, sharp as broken glass. But because writing about the strap and the beads means looking at the foundation, the bedrock everything else got built on. And foundations are ugly things. Concrete and rebar, nothing pretty about them. But they hold up the whole damn building. Chapter 1. The Gospel of Leather. They say some kids grew up with bedtime stories, lullabies, soft words before the dark closed in. Not me. My lullabies were the creak of leather, the jingle of a belt buckle taken off its hook, the sharp whistle of my old man's teeth before the strap came down. Folks can call it beating, punishment, cruelty. I call it correction. Correction keeps a boy straight. Correction keeps him useful. And back on the South Side in the 40s, a useless boy was worse than no boy at all. Every crack of that strap was a verse in the gospel my father preached. His church was the kitchen floor. His scripture the red lines across my back. I didn't cry. Not if I could help it. Tears gave him more reason. I learned to swallow hurt like stale bread. And like bread, it filled me. Made me heavy, solid, ready to carry what other kids dropped. The strap itself was a work of art, in its way. 2 inches wide, maybe 3 feet long, doubled over and stitched at one end for a handle. The old man kept it oiled, supple. Said a stiff strap broke the skin too easy. And he wasn't trying to maim me, just correct me. As if there was some kind of mercy in that distinction. He had a whole ritual around it. First came the whistle through his teeth. Warning shot. Last chance to straighten up whatever needed straightening. Then the walk to the wall where it hung, next to Ma's crucifix. The unhooking, slow and deliberate. The testing snap in the air, making sure it still had the right sound, the right flexibility. Then the instruction. Hands on the table. Don't move. I learned to count the strokes by the pain. 1 to 3 was a reminder. 4 to 6 was serious correction. 7 or more meant I'd really stepped over some line I hadn't known was there. The old man never explained the lines. That was part of the lesson. Figure out the rules by breaking them. Remember them by the consequences. My mother had her own religion. Rosaries. Whispering whispered Hail Marys. The wet shine of holy water across her forehead. She prayed while he corrected. I saw her lips moving fast, the beads sliding quick through her fingers, as if God might answer if she said it fast enough. But he never did. The leather spoke louder than the prayers. Sometimes I wondered what she was praying for. For him to stop. For me to be better. For the whole house to just disappear into one of her beads. Small and manageable. I never asked. Asking questions was a good way to earn extra strokes. And so I learned 2 liturgies. One of bruises, one of beads, one for the body, one for the soul. A boy who can hold both without breaking. That's a boy destined for something more than the corner store or the factory line. That's what I tell myself now. The neighborhood kids talked about their fathers too, in hushed voices behind the school. Tommy Kowalski's old man used his fists, left marks on Tommy's face that couldn't be hidden. The Brennan kids got locked in the coal cellar. Mary Sullivan's father just disappeared for days at a time. Came back mean and reeking. I never talked about the strap, partly because talking felt like betrayal. Not of the old man, but of myself. Admitting hurt was admitting weakness, but partly because I understood, even then, that the strap was making me into something. Something harder than the other kids. Something more durable. The strap was an investment in my future, even if neither of us knew what that future looked like yet. Chapter 2. Discipline in every stroke. A strap is like a ruler. It measures how far you can go before it snaps back, how much slack you get before you're pulled into line. My father knew how to measure. One look, one whistle, one snap. That was the yardstick. He'd hang it on the wall where I could see it from the table, right next to the crucifix my mother insisted on. Leather and Christ, side by side, as if pain and salvation were partners in the same business. Maybe they were. I started to study that strap the way other kids studied comics. The weight of it, the smell of oil rubbed into the hide, the way it curled at the tip like a snake at rest. I memorized the sound of it leaving the hook. That sound became the opening note to every lesson about manhood. You don't cry. You don't talk back. You don't slouch. You show up. You shut up. You make yourself useful. The old man had a whole philosophy about discipline, though he never called it that. Philosophy was for college boys and priests, not steel workers. But he had his principles, and he stuck to them religiously. A boy without discipline is like a car without brakes, he'd say, usually while oiling the strap. Might go fast for a while, but he'll crash hard when he hits the first real turn. A man who can't control himself can't control nothing else. Not his money, not his family, not his future. Pain's a teacher. Best teacher there is, because you don't forget her lessons. I believed it. Or at least I told myself I did. Belief makes things easier. And when you're small, in a world built for fists and voices louder than yours, you learn to make belief a tool. If you believe enough, maybe others will too. But here's what the old man never understood. I wasn't just learning to take discipline. I was learning to give it. Every stroke of that strap was a lesson in power, in control, in the mechanics of correction. He thought he was shaping an obedient son. He was actually creating something else entirely. I studied the physics of it. How the strap needed to be swung from the shoulder, not the elbow, to get the right force. How the angle mattered. Too steep and it just stung. Too shallow and it wrapped around instead of striking clean. How the grip on the handle affected everything. Too tight, and you lost flexibility. Too loose, and you lost control. Discipline. That's what he called it. Discipline is what I kept. Long after the strap was quiet, I carried it inside me. A voice telling me to keep things lined up, nailed down, corrected. A man who carries his father's strap in his head can keep a whole room in line without lifting a finger. The other kids at school, they had no discipline. They'd cry over a scraped knee, complain about homework, whine when things didn't go their way. Soft, all of them, soft as risen dough. And I learned to use that softness, to press into it and leave my mark, just like the strap had done to me. Sister Margaret noticed it first. "You have such self-control," she told me once, after I'd sat through an entire arithmetic lesson with a fever burning through me. "Such maturity for your age." Self-control. That's what they called it when you'd learn to eat pain without making a sound. Maturity. That's what they called it when you'd been aged by leather and fear into something older than your years. I smiled and thanked her. Added her approval to my ledger. One more person who saw what I wanted them to see. Nothing more. Chapter 3. Beads and Bargains. If the strap was my father's law, the rosary was my mother's bargain. She bargained with heaven every night, whispered deals into the shadows. "Keep him safe, Lord. Keep him steady. Don't let the devil in." I watched her mouth move, watched her eyes flicker like candles almost blown out. Ma's rosary was old, brought over from the old country by her mother. The beads were worn smooth, decades of prayers rubbing them down to something less than they'd been. Some were cracked, held together by the wire threaded through them. The crucifix at the end was bent, twisted from being clutched too hard too many times. She had a routine, same as the old man had his. After dinner, after dishes, after I'd done my homework and the old man had settled into his chair with the evening paper, she'd move to her corner of the sofa, pulled a rosary from her apron pocket, and begin. The words were in Latin mostly, or some mix of Latin and English that sounded like a different language entirely. I never learned them properly, but I learned the rhythm. The speed of desperate prayer versus resigned prayer. The difference between asking and begging. The particular cadence of prayer said over a child who'd just been corrected. But prayers were coins in a slot machine that never paid. The strap always won. Still, I kept the sound of those beads in my head. The soft click of one sin moving to the next. Beads, strap, strap, beads. Pain, prayer. That rhythm carved itself into me. I started to understand Ma's prayers as a kind of accounting system. Every bead represented a sin confessed, a plea made, a bargain attempted. 5 decades, 53 beads total if you count the crucifix and medals. 53 chances to get God's attention, to negotiate a better deal for her son, for her husband, for herself. I even tried the beads myself, once. Rolled them in my palm, whispered the words. It felt like counting debts more than asking favors. One bead for each wrong. One bead for each time I deserved the strap. And if I prayed enough, maybe God would send me a softer hand. He didn't. But the habit stuck. I started keeping tallies in my head. Who owed me? Who respected me? Who needed correction? Who deserved a favor? Rosaries taught me that every bead has weight. Every debt, every bruise, every kindness, they all add up. And if of you string them together, you get a chain strong enough to pull a man anywhere you want. The rosary taught me something else too. The power of ritual. Ma's prayers didn't work. Not in any practical sense. The old man still drank. Still used the strap. Still treated her like furniture that needed moving around. But the prayers gave her a structure, a framework for enduring. They turned suffering into something with meaning, even if that meaning was invented. I borrowed that principle, created my own rituals, my own structures. Not prayers, exactly, but patterns, ways of walking, ways of speaking, ways of presenting myself that became as automatic as Ma's Hail Marys. And just like her prayers, my rituals didn't change reality. They changed how reality was perceived. Chapter 4. Faces in the Pew. Church on Sunday was a parade of masks. Men in suits too tight across their bellies. Women in hats blooming like gardens. Kids scrubbed raw with soap. They all bowed, knelt, crossed themselves. My father, too. Same hand that held the strap folded neat against his chest. My mother's lips moved faster there, whispering desperate to catch God's attention in a crowd. St. Stanislaus was our church, a big stone building that seemed to grow right out of the sidewalk, roots going deep into the south side. Polish parish, mostly, though there were enough Irish and Germans mixed in to keep things interesting. The old man insisted we sit in the middle, not up front with the show-offs, not in back with the drunks trying to sober up. Middle meant respectable, neither above nor below our station. I watched faces instead of crosses. Watched how men nodded to each other, how women whispered behind gloves. Respect wasn't about God. It was about display. Who shook whose hand? Who sat up front? Who put the biggest bill on the plate? Mr. Kowalski always sat in the third pew, always put in a $5 bill where everyone could see it. His hardware store was doing good, and he wanted folks to know it. Mrs. Chen sat in back, near the door, ready to bolt if anyone looked at her wrong. The Brennans spread across a whole pew, 7 kids and counting, looking prosperous in quantity, if not in quality. I learned more from that than any sermon. Church was theater, and I studied it like a play. The strap taught me correction. The rosary taught me debt. But the pews taught me performance. If you could kneel with conviction, even when your knees ached, people believed you righteous. Belief again. Belief was always the trick. Father Kowalski, no relation to the hardware man, gave the sermons in a mix of English and Polish that somehow everybody understood. He talked about sin like it was a disease you could catch from bad company. About salvation like it was a lottery ticket you bought with good behavior. His voice would rise and fall, dramatic as a radio show, and people ate it up. But I noticed how Father Kowalski's eyes would scan the congregation while he preached, counting attendance, noting who was absent, marking who was paying attention and who was daydreaming. The church kept its own ledger, and Father Kowalski was the bookkeeper. I practiced my own mask in those pews. Eyes down, lips tight, hands folded. An angel on the outside. Inside, I was measuring, always measuring. Who looked guilty when Father talked about theft? Who looked nervous when he mentioned adultery? Who seemed relieved when he got to the part about God's infinite mercy? Information. All of it information. And information, properly cataloged, became power. The old man thought church was about salvation. Ma thought it was about community. I knew it was about performance. And I was learning to be one hell of a performer. Chapter 5. Quiet Rebellions. Of course, a boy can't live only in straps and prayers. There were alleys to run, corners to linger, small freedoms hidden between errands. I learned to smile for neighbors. Yes, sir, no, sir. Help carry a bag of coal. But I also learned to keep little secrets. The secrets started small. A nickel skimmed from grocery change, blamed on wrongatorium. A newspaper delivered to the wrong house, giving me an excuse to read it before correcting the mistake. 5 extra minutes on an errand, spent watching the card game in the back of Murphy's saloon through the greasy window. Sometimes I'd linger by the rail yard, watch the men load freight. Imagine walking on and not coming back. The train seemed to promise something. Movement, escape, possibility. But I never got on. Not because I was scared, but because I understood, even then, that running away was for people who had something to run from. I wasn't running from anything. I was building towards something. Sometimes I'd slip into the drugstore, thumb through magazines I had no coins for, practice the art of looking like I belonged. Mr. Patterson, who ran the place, never said nothing. Probably figured a boy reading crime magazines wasn't likely to steal them. He was right. I wasn't interested in the stories themselves. I was interested in the patterns. How the criminals got caught. What mistakes they made. What led to their downfall. Research. I was the your research, though I didn't call it that yet. These weren't crimes. Not yet. They were rehearsals. Tests of how invisible I could be, or how convincing I could seem. The strap had taught me fear. The rosary had taught me guilt. But the streets taught me how to wear them like cloaks. Take them on. Take them off. depending on the company. I found a loose board in the basement, behind the coal bin where nobody looked. Started keeping things there. Nothing valuable, nothing that would be missed. A deck of cards from a game somebody left in the alley. A broken watch I found in the gutter. A photograph that blew against my leg one windy day, showing a woman I didn't know smiling at a camera. These items became my own rosary. I'd take them out sometimes, hold them, study them. Try to imagine the lives they came from, the stories they could tell. Practice reading objects the way Ma read beads, the way the old man read the tension in my shoulders before he reached for the strap. I knew my father would call it rebellion. I called it practice. Practice for a life where correction came not from leather, but from my own hand. The old man caught me once, coming back from one of my wanderings, later than I should have been. He was waiting by the door, strap already in hand. Didn't ask where I'd been, didn't want explanations. Just pointed to the table. But that time was different. That time, while the strap was singing its song across my back, I was somewhere else in my head, counting strokes, cataloging the force, the angle, the rhythm, turning pain into data, correction into education. When it was over, the old man looked at me funny. "You didn't make a sound," he said. Not impressed exactly, more like concerned. Like maybe he'd broken something in me that he'd meant to strengthen. "No, sir," I said. "Just discipline, like you taught me." He nodded slowly, hung the strap back on its hook, and never looked quite comfortable around me after that. Chapter 6. The ledger begins. Every man keeps a ledger, whether he writes it down or not. Mine started in those years. Who gave me respect? Who didn't? Who owed me small favors? Who thought they could laugh without me noticing? I remembered everything. Still do. It began with simple marks in my head. One for the teacher who praised me. One for the boy who mocked me. One for the neighbor who trusted me with my shovel. Credits and debits. A rosary of my own making. Beads not of prayer, but of memory. I started to formalize it. Not on paper. Paper could be found, read, used against me. But in my mind, I created columns. Names on one side, transactions on the other. Every interaction became an entry. Every favor given or received got noted. Every slight or kindness got recorded. Tommy Kowalski owes me for reading help. Paid in protection. Account balanced, but can be leveraged again if needed. Sister Margaret thinks I'm special. Gives extra chances. Investment in reputation. Maintain good behavior in her presence. High return on minimal effort. Mr. Kowalski, hardware. Trusts me with small tasks. Opportunity for information gathering. Learn his business, his patterns, potential future value. Mrs. O'Malley, grateful for help with groceries. Tells neighbors about helpful boy. Free advertising. Continue assistance. Maintain reputation. The old man owes me nothing, expects everything. Fear-based relationship. Study methods. Learn techniques. Wait for opportunity to shift balance. Ma prays for me, loves me. Useless emotion but can be leveraged. Play to her faith, her hope. Easy manipulation but feels messy. Avoid when possible. My father thought the strap kept me in line. My mother thought the rosary kept me safe. The truth is, both gave me a system, a framework to measure myself against the world. And once a boy learns to measure, he's no longer just reacting. He's planning. The ledger taught me patience. Some debts take years to collect. Some investments need time to mature. The old man wanted immediate compliance, instant results. Ma wanted immediate salvation, instant grace. But I was learning to think longer, see further. Father Kelly talked about eternal consequences. Heaven and hell as ultimate accounts that balanced in the afterlife. I understood the concept, but applied it to the present. Every action had consequences, but not necessarily immediate ones. Some debts accrued interest. Some favors multiplied over time. That's when I knew correction wasn't just something done to me. It was something I could do. Not yet. Not openly. But the seed was planted. The ledger was started. The foundation was laid. Chapter 7. Closing the book. If the first entry was the stage, this one is the scripture. The strap and the rosary. Two holy objects in my house. Two pillars in the church of my upbringing. One taught me pain. The other taught me guilt. Put together, they taught me control. I didn't know then where it would lead. A boy doesn't see the future as a map. He sees it as a hallway. Doors on either side. Some locked, some waiting. The leather strap was one key, the rosary another. Both hung heavy in my pocket, even when I left the house empty-handed. Looking back now, I can see how those early years constructed me. The strap gave me durability, tolerance for discomfort, understanding of fear as a tool. The rosary gave me patience, appreciation for ritual, understanding of guilt as a currency. Church gave me performance skills. The streets gave me observation skills. Together, they made something new. The old man's correction made me hard. Ma's prayers made me calculating. The combination made me dangerous, though nobody knew it yet. Not even me, entirely. I just knew I was different. Not better, not worse. Different. Like I was being built to specifications nobody had written down, for a purpose nobody had named. People talk about monsters being born. I say they are built. Hammered into shape by fathers who correct. Polished by mothers who pray. Tested by streets that never sleep. I was being built, piece by piece. And when the building was done, There would be no undoing it. The strap and the rosary hang in my memory now, side by side like they hung on that kitchen wall. Leather and beads, pain and prayer, correction and bargaining, two sides of the same coin. And I learned to flip that coin in my favor. Every man needs his gospel, his scripture, his foundation. Mine was written in welts and whispered prayers, in ledgers kept in my head, and rituals practiced in secret. Not a holy book, maybe, but effective. And in the end, effectiveness matters more than holiness. Order remains. But now I understand. Order isn't just something imposed from outside. Order is something you create, something you enforce, something you become. The next entries will show how that order got applied, how the lessons of leather and beads got translated into action, how the foundation got built upon, how the boy who learned to take correction learned to give it. But for now, this chapter closes. The gospel of leather has been preached. The bargains of the rosary have been made. The ledger has been started. Everything else follows from this. End of entry 2.
Ah. I trust you enjoyed this glimpse into a most curious diary. If so, leave behind a small token of your delight with a like, and do consider joining our circle by subscribing. And remember, ring the little bell, and you shall be the very first to know when another diary or a fresh entry emerges from the shadows. And if a whisper stirs in your mind, a thought, a riddle, perhaps a name of someone whose secrets you would dare to uncover, leave it for me below. I read them one by one. And who knows, your wish may guide my hand to the very next diary I choose from my collection.